Good day and a very warm welcome, my bid to everyone. My name is Fahmi Aziz, your moderator for today. Welcome to the Journalism E-Colloquium, Artificial Intelligence Practice and Implication for Journalism. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome all of our participants for joining the session today. How are you all doing today? I do hope everyone is in good health and excellent condition as always. Before we begin with our session today, let us hear the Negaraku and Wawasan Setia. Sorry about that. Sorry for the technical mistake there. Before we begin, can I have a mic check with Tengku, Bahar, and also Aziff? Tengku, are you there?
I am here. Sound testing 1, 2, 3. Can you guys hear me all right?
Okay, loud and clear.
Sound. Mic test 1, 2, 3. Am I clear?
All right, Aziff. Is still clear? Tengku, Aziff, the time now is Malaysian Standard Time, 2:23 p.m. We will begin sharp at 2:30 p.m. sharp, yeah?
Okay, sounds good. I'm just going to stop my video and mute myself for a bit as let me just take care of some housekeeping duties.
Understood. All right, Tengku.
All right.
Aziff, a bit of a request from the technical team. Could you mind closing your curtains bit because the backlight?
I see. No problem.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
All right. Okay. Okay, much better. Thank you, Aziff.
How's that?
All right, great.
Better?
Thank you.
Okay. Let me open up other sources of light. Just make it a little bit more clear.
Okay, sure. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin with our session today, let us hear the Negaraku and Wawasan Setia UiTM to formally begin.
Bersatu kita warga UiTM, kita bangsa perkasa, taat dan setia untuk negara, penuh semangat wajar. Kita jangan mudah terlupa pengorbanan perjuangan anak bangsa.
Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya wal mursalin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Ya Allah, Ya Rahman, Ya Rahim, we express our gratitude to you for allowing us to attend the Journalism E-Colloquium, Artificial Intelligence, Practice and Implication for Journalism, hosted by the final year journalism students of the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, UiTM Shah Alam. Ya Allah, we humbly ask you for the safety of our religion and the welfare of our body. Ya Allah, Lord of the implementing authority, make the days that we have gone through, beginning with your mercy, continue with your blessings, and end with your forgiveness. Make the days that we have gone through filled with guidance and end with excellence. Ya Allah, Ya Muhaimin, Ya Aziz, Ya Jabbar, Ya Allah, Let our efforts as a means to enlighten and convince ourselves that the personal safety of either outer or inner is a prerequisite for achieving happiness and excellence in various fields. Grant us faith and strength in order to face the challenges of life in this new millennium. Ya Allah, Ya Qadi al-Hajat, Ya Allah, show us guidance in every step of the way so we do not go astray from the path of the blessed. Forgive us for the sins that we know and the sins that we are not aware of. Bless us with strong iman, taqwa, purity of heart, good manners and good deeds. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم والحمد لله رب العالمين. Amin, amin, ya Rabbal Alameen. Ladies and gentlemen, now let us hear a few words from the 45th Journalism E-Colloquium Project Lead, Fuad Nizam.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and a good day I bid to the Dean, Associate Professor Dr. Masila Hamzah, Deputy Deans, Professors, Head of Centres, Course Coordinators, beloved lecturers, members of the faculties, esteemed panelists, guests, and my fellow friends. On behalf of the committee members of 45th Journalism E-Colloquium, the future of modern reporting, robotisation of the newsroom, firstly, I would like to welcome each and every one of you in this much anticipated event, hosted to you by us, the final year journalism students of UiTM Shah Alam. The Journalism Colloquium event is a rite of passage by the final year students. Therefore, for this year, we aim to shed light on the future of the newsroom that we know of. The future that is exciting and will considerably assist the journalists in producing news pieces. The future that is not far from now, where data-driven information as well as robotic assistance alike. As we know, the nuances in field of reporting would still see the light of human interactions and emotions, as words penned by robots and artificial intelligence are far from what we humans see perfect. So, ladies and gentlemen, as I quote the famous phrase by the adventurer Bear Grylls, improvise, adapt, overcome. This is where future journalists are ought to hold on to those words, working hand in hand with technology and continue breaking barriers in reporting. With the information shared through this e-colloquium, I hope that the outlook on how robots and artificial intelligence are viewed in good light when working together in symbiosis with journalists and reporters. Ladies and gentlemen, it has been an eye-opening experience for me being given the chance to lead this project. And today, we're about to see countless hours and sleepless nights that every committee member endured coming to fruition. And I hope that each and everyone attending this event today would enjoy new knowledge shared by our esteemed and experienced panelists. Again, I would like to extend my sincerest gratitude to our lecturers, sponsors, and to others that made this event possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Fuad. Next, let us proceed with a speech by the Honorable Dean of the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, Associate Professor Dr. Masila Hamzah, followed by a montage to mark the launch of our event today.
it is further mold the relationship between news management and pushing the journalistic skills to suit the various segments of audiences encompassing digital and cyberspace. Through to these inexorable changes, robotic journalism, also known as automated journalism, is now becoming the most recent topic of conversation among media practitioners. If I may share, the marvel happened in 2016 when Chinese researchers developed the world's first humanoid robot journalist named Jia that has the ability to even conduct an interview with the editor of a magazine. Humanity has witnessed the evolution of technology from its use as a tool manufacturing during the Industrial Revolution to our current reliance on technology for virtually everything from healthcare to education. Business matters and mobility has been made better and faster due to the technological advances. Ladies and gentlemen, the advantages of automated journalism is speed. When topped with automation, has further enabled rapid publication of news stories, and as the source data become more available, a story may be produced almost instantly. Automated journalists are designed to produce enormous amounts of data at a faster rate. I sincerely hope that our conversation here today spark new ideas that could ignite potential solutions, resolve between content creators as well as table best practices for all media practitioners alike to accustom to. Ladies and gentlemen, in these very volatile and uncertain times, it has been proven time and time again that the narrative industry is here to stay and will remain relevant. However, we do hope that notes were taken and discussions were spurred by all the attendees today, because collaborations such as this should be a stepping stone for those of you who are serious into breaking into the industry. Aspiring journalists must be analytical, bold, and curious to deliver stories that change and move the masses for the greater good. Lastly, I would like to express my thank you to all panelists for taking your time out of your busy schedule to enlighten the minds of our young media practitioners. My appreciation also extends to all sponsors and mass comm alumni who have granted support to our students and cooperated in making this program a success. With that, I hereby declare that the 45th Journalism Colloquium, The Future of Modern Reporting, Robotization of the Newsroom, is officially open. Stay safe and thank you.
bit to our extinguished guests, course coordinators, beloved lecturers, fellow journalism and university peers, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Fahmi Aziz, your moderator for today's session. Welcome to the 46th Journalism E-Colloquium, hosted to you by the final year journalism students of UiTM Shah Alam. I appreciate you taking some time off your busy schedules, especially on a Saturday, to join us. I do hope you learn a lot from today's discussion. I also like to thank all of our sponsors, Yusa Food Products Senjan Berhad, Racepix Media Services, Alif Design, and also the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture for their contributions in ensuring that this event goes smoothly as planned. Ladies and gentlemen, joining us today is Aziff Azuddin, data analyst from Citymapper, and Tengku Bahar, photo editor for the Asia Pacific region from AFP, who will be sharing their insights and experience for today's topic of discussion. Before we begin today's much anticipated session, I think it would be great for the audience to get to know today's distinguished members of the panel even better. Aziff, Tengku, is that okay with you?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sure, not a problem.
All right. I'll begin with our first panelist, Aziff Azuddin, is an alumnus of UiTM Shah Alam, where he also majored in journalism here at the Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, before pursuing his master's degree in sociology at the University of Manchester. Throughout his professional career, Aziff has held many different positions, from being a journalist to a photojournalist and I believe a producer with BFM, to a policy researcher with the Centre, and now a data analyst with Citymapper. Assalamualaikum again and good afternoon, Aziff. How are you today?
Waalaikumsalam. I'm doing well, thank you.
Right, great to have you here. Ladies and gentlemen, now allow me to introduce to you our second panelist, Tengku Bahar. Tengku Bahar holds a bachelor's degree in visual anthropology from the University of Virginia. He has worked with newspapers in Virginia and Texas as the photojournalism industry transitioned from film to digital before joining AFP as a temporary stringer and later promoted to full-time staff with the Kuala Lumpur Bureau. Now, Tengku serves as AFP's Asia Pacific region photo editor based in Hong Kong. Assalamualaikum Tengku and good afternoon. How's the weather in Hong Kong?
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullah. Alhamdulillah, not too bad. A bit cloudy, probably will rain at some point. I hope my internet holds.
Okay, glad to have you here, and I hope the same thing as well here at Shah Alam. Okay, before I begin, Tengku, Aziff, can I get a thumbs up from both of you to start off the discussion again? Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, as we all may or may not be aware, we live in the age of information, where information and all sorts of knowledge is at the tip of our fingertips or one tap of the screen away on our smartphones. With the many achievements we have attained in technology so far, the internet in particular, it has allowed for the digitalization in almost all aspects of our daily lives, amplified by the creation of artificial intelligence, or more commonly known as AI. The newsroom is no exception to this as well. Previously, people, and when I say people, I mean journalists and media practitioners, who go out to find news and stories to be written and published. Now, news can be created with computer programs by automated journalism. Stories can be generated automatically by computers rather than by human reporters, all thanks to artificial intelligence. With the advent of robot journalism and with the help of AI, it has in some ways changed the landscape of the industry. And at one point, some would argue that it is leveling the playing field for journalists in the newsroom. With that said, for today's topic on artificial intelligence, practice, and implications for journalism. Aziff, as a data analyst, in your opinion, how has artificial intelligence influenced your line of work in data journalism, especially in terms of data collection? You have the floor, Aziff.
Thank you, Fahmi. So I think when we think about AI or artificial intelligence, there is the tendency, and this is thanks to popular media, right? We have a tendency to think of robots that are sentient, that can think for themselves. And while that is true to an extent, because there's recent news, I think just this week, about the appearance of an AI that can think for himself in Google, right? But I think I rather like to think about AI in terms of the process, right? Which is machine learning. How do we develop codes or programs that can automate certain processes, right? And for me, this is no different than many other processes happening in other industries, right? This has been happening for years, decades, in fact, where machines, programs, codes, robots, in fact, have taken over many other different processes, right? Such as factories, where you manufacture cars, for example. That is automating a process through writing a code in a computer that tells the robot to do certain things, previously done by humans, but now done by machines. So AI or machine learning in journalism is no different. Now, as a policy researcher and even as a journalist, right, the major challenge is for me when it comes to data journalism is how do we get the data, right? Now, Malaysia doesn't really practice open data culture. I myself have had lots of challenges getting data from the ministries, from agencies, and elsewhere, right? So a lot of times I have to source my data from third party or secondary sources, in fact, and these are instances where, and this is where the application is, right? This is where I automate certain processes, such as creating alerts for topics of interest. So as a policy researcher back then, a lot of my interest, a lot of my subject matter expert is in public transportation. So I would create alerts, I would write codes, or I would design processes where every time news or reports or research, new pieces of information come out about public transportation in Malaysia, I would get alerts. It will go immediately into a spreadsheet. So I collect all the data that I necessarily need there. Now that brings me to another point of this application, right, which is data scraping. Now, most data journalists are very well versed, I think, and very familiar with data scraping, where you basically write a program that goes through websites, whether it's government websites or whether it's news websites or even other websites of interest or sources of interest, and you look for certain specific information that you need. One application could be maybe scraping data from a property site, right? Because you want to do a story basically looking at the trends of property ownership, prices, and such not. And usually in those websites, they have thousands and millions of data sources, which is too difficult, I guess, to do it manually. So you write processes, machine learning processes to kind of like look out for certain information. You want to look for locations, you want to tie it to the latitude and longitude of where it's located, the prices, what year those prices were put up. And then once you have all the data, you get to the analysis part. And this is where you can also apply machine learning, right? To basically put out all the information for you in a very legible manner, in a way that's easy to understand. So at the end of the day, what you're doing as part of machine learning, the application of robotic journalism, I suppose, is you leave all the heavy work, the heavy lifting to programs, to AI, I suppose, where they do a lot of the heavy work, processing all these massive amounts of data, which you cannot humanly do, which is not humanly possible. And your job then as a journalist is to look at the data, to look at the end result and kind of review it and see what story is this data telling me, right? What are the trends I can spot from here and whatnot? And maybe you can teach the machine to spot the trends, right? To show you, okay, maybe in 2002, 2005, there seems to be a dip in the property price market. What is that? Your job is to analyze why is that. The machine's job is to tell you there's something there and you should be looking at it. So at the end of the day, though, so for me, as its application in journalism is useful because a lot of the heavy work is done by the machines. Your role then is analysis and crafting a story that people will care about, and potentially stories that can change the direction of policy and get people thinking about why such a subject is so important.
Okay, thank you, Aziff. I guess maybe there are certain limitations that we cannot penetrate that only with the help of AI. The assistance of AI could help us with that. Now I'd like to redirect to our panelists, Tengku, Bahar, but before that, I would like to remind our participants to please fill out the Google form that will be provided to you in the chat box, and also to follow all of our social medias, especially Colloquium 45 at Colloquium 45 for new updates. Now, I'd like to give the floor to Tengku Bahar. Tengku, as a photo editor, maybe you could share with us and with the audience about the progress of technological enhancement, especially in AI and robotic journalism in the newsroom. To you, Tengku.
Okay. Before I start, I just wanted to add in to what Aziff was talking about earlier. So when you are dealing with vast amounts of data, it needs to be collated and then presented. A data journalist can work in a newsroom, in an office. Now, I am a photo editor and I work with photographers across the region. By virtue of being a photographer, we are witness to history in the making. Photographers need to be out there. And by nature of our work, we are actually presenting a microcosmic view or a humanitarian view of what the larger issue is. Those photographs can drag you into it. So to add into what Aziff was talking about, you might have all these issues, all this data that needs to be collated and then presented. The photographer's perspective is to present in a visual form. How can we present? How can we how to say it? How can we make a certain element of the story clear and present? For instance, climate change. It's a steady progression that in our lifetimes we might not be able to see in a year or two, but a photographer can bring attention to that larger issue. Now, back to your earlier question about the technological advancement in AI and robotic journalism in the newsroom as a photo editor. To be honest, within my department, we do not apply any sort of machine learning, any sort of AI. Like a lot of editorial decisions, or in fact, most all of the editorial decisions are still made by breathing, living photo editors. The technology involved has changed over the years. For instance, we use Photoshop to edit our work, and we use it within the framework of photojournalism. Obviously, we cannot remove things or add things in, but what we can do is that, in terms of color balance, for instance, there are certain algorithms within the history of Photoshop that makes, correcting color balance a lot easier now than it was, say, when I first started my career 25 years ago. So the technology has improved, but the editorial in terms of the editorial decision makings within the photo department, it's still very much human in nature.
Sorry, Tengku. Fahmi, if you don't mind me adding to what Tengku said. Actually, there was something you just said something earlier, which was very interesting, right? Where, as photographers, you're witness to human history, and you put the phrase which I was trying to find earlier, which I now find it, is basically putting a human face on huge amounts of data. And that's the thing. With the economy, we can put statistics, we can put numbers out in newspapers and in reports, but you don't understand what the implications are of those numbers until, and maybe that's the job of the journalist, right? Or even the job of a photojournalist, which is kind of to humanize and make more relatable large amounts of data that is incomprehensible to people and tell a more human story about it. So like you said, like climate change, how do you tell a story of graphs and numbers of temperature changes around the world? You show them photographs of polar caps melting, for example, or the greenery of the Amazon being cut down by half. And yeah, I think just this is something that just popped in my head when you were talking about putting a human face to such large amounts of data.
I also wanted to actually that phrase that I like to tell people is, like photographers are witness to history in the making. So that's from the perspective of a photo editor. Sorry, from the perspective of a photographer. A photographer is out in the field, being witness to history in the making. A photo editor plays a role in how that history will be remembered. So there's always two sides to the story. Likewise, if you're talking about large chunks of data, that's one half of the story. But how do you present it? How do you draw people in? That's the emotional, that's the human aspect of it. And even if we go to the days where where AI wasn't involved in journalism, when you look at photographs that are seared in our memory, let's take for instance Nick Ut's picture of Napalm Girl during the Vietnam War. Or if we talk about Eddie Adams' picture of the execution of the Viet Cong soldier. We know the Vietnam War is happening. It is ongoing. It's been going on since the French pulled out. But one picture can pull you right back in, and it shows you the human element of the war. So there are, even back in the days when journalists were working with paper, with raw data, with press releases, with interviews, and so on and so forth. You still needed a human aspect of presenting that information, of grabbing that information and presenting it quickly, succinctly, and with emotion. And that's where photographers come in. So it's a symbiotic relationship.
Couldn't have said it better myself, to be honest.
Tengku, before we continue with the session, I'd just like to ask a question on how you mentioned that on the level of the editorial level, it's still dominated by us humans. AI hasn't been able to penetrate there yet, and your experience in Newsroom. This might sound a bit novice of me, but as someone who is uninitiated, I guess, in terms of photography and your own line of work, some argue that with the integration of artificial intelligence in mobile phones nowadays, it has somewhat almost rendering the need for photojournalists with your cameras out there, just with the usage of a mobile phone and all of the assistance that is being given by AI is more than enough to have an adequate picture to be sent back to the newsroom. So what's your take on that?
I think it's good. I mean, my point is this. Look, I started off in the days where I shot film. And I'll give you an example. So back in the early 2000s, I was working for a newspaper in the US. And we used to cover NCAA basketball. And it was just at the cusp of switching over to digital. And our paper was still shooting film. So if I were to cover a basketball match, I literally was only able to shoot the first half of the match, the first half of the game. Then I had to jump into my car, drive back to the newsroom, develop my film, then scan it. Now, the newspaper was a contributor to the Associated Press. So my pictures, even though they were being used for my newspaper, in terms of deadline for my paper, I didn't have to worry about it. But for AP, being a wire news agency, that was a problem. They needed the pictures now or 5 minutes ago. So the time lost between driving back to the newsroom, developing the film, drawing the film, and scanning it costs a lot of time. So let's look to where we are now. I can take a picture, or rather, let's take some of my photographers on the field. One of our photographers can take pictures, and with a wireless transmitter built into the camera, the photographer can shoot a sequence, tag a picture, and send it straight up through FTP via his connected phone straight into my pending. I can see that. I can listen to his voice tag. So when he shoots a picture, he can read. He can dictate what's happening in the picture. If it's a sport event, he can say, okay, like footballer number 33 on the left. So I can look that at the playlist, start list. If it is a news event, he can tell me what's going on. This person was, I don't know, something happened. So I can listen to his audio voice tags, figure out a caption for it, and get it out on the wire within a few minutes. We're talking about maybe 2-3 minutes compared to 45 minutes back in the day when I was a film photographer. So yes, it is as a photojournalist where we need to be out there. There's no way we can do our jobs on a desk. So it frees up the photographer to be out in the field and to do his work efficiently.
Thank you, Tengku, for the explanation. I guess what I can summarize from this round is that maybe we can say that artificial intelligence is helping a lot with the workload that as a data analyst like Aziff, to process data and other works as well. But at a certain level, and as Tengku mentioned, at an editorial level, it's still up to us. I don't think we have any AI that's smart enough to give the green light for a certain news. I think unless Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos competes to find something that can help with that. But yes, I think that summarizes the first round. Tengku, are you going to add something? Would you like to add something? Or
yeah, my question is, if Elon Musk or Bezos does something like that, what's the implication for us? It kind of
I'd be
suits their
quite
benefit,
worried.
doesn't it?
Yeah, I'd be quite worried, to be honest.
I think I shouldn't have
Why would they
mentioned
want to do it? Why do they want to do something like that? Do they want to control the narrative? The reason why we are around, why this profession exists, is to provide checks and balances.
I agree with you, Tengku. I would be very, very worried as well if that day does come into reality, but hopefully it does not. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we proceed with the second round, I'd like to remind the panelists, the participants, if you do have any questions for Tengku and also Aziff, please feel free to ask in the chat box. Please don't be shy. All right, ladies and gentlemen, now we go on to the second round. I'd like to redirect the discussion to Aziff. Aziff, as we are talking about the practice of artificial intelligence and its implication towards journalism, could you elaborate on the ethics of utilizing AI in practicing data journalism? What are the stakes when information is being written by AI?
Right. When we talk about ethical systems and ethical frameworks, ethics is at the heart of journalism, right? How the sort of stories we tell, the sources that we get the stories from, right? And this doesn't differ when we're using machine learning, right? At the end of the day, when it comes to machine learning and data acquisition, it's where we source the data, how did we source it, and what information do we make public for it. So take, for example, if you get leaks, if you get data that is leaked from a major source, for example, let's think, what most commonly what often happens, I think, in which we see in the news every few months or so, is our IC data, right, being leaked from the government. We don't know where it comes from, but it leaks out into the public, right? And as a journalist, sometimes you're interested to see what sort of data has come out from those leaks, right? You want to analyze it for journalistic purposes. But when you get hands on the data, you get sensitive information as well. You get age, you get location, names of people. And that's where the ethical framework is extremely important, because you now have the responsibility to protect this information and maybe tell a story that talks about the implication of leaks, who's affected, without say bringing harm to the names of those people on this list, which is a source problem, right? A source protection has always been at the heart of journalism, where you get your sources from, who you get your sources from, sometimes from people within power, institutions of power, but you have to protect their identity in the interest of protecting them as people who are whistleblowers, right? And same thing here. There is an ethical framework at the end in the process of getting data, where you get your data from as well. Are you getting it through third-party means from the black market? Black market meaning maybe the dark web, not dark web, but basically people who get data in through non-legal means, right? For example, and I think in data science or even computer science, even there's a term called garbage in, garbage out, which is essentially this idea where if you put in data which is bad, you get output which is bad. If the processes that you write to process the data isn't good, you won't get good outputs anyway. And I think a very good example of this is Cambridge Analytica, right? That happened in 2018. And Cambridge Analytica essentially showed how personal data from Facebook, where millions of people's personal data was used to manipulate political sentiments via advertising. Now that's unethical, right? These people don't usually read terms and conditions, unfortunately, right? People just click, yes, I agree, but they don't know what happens to the data. The discussion of how data is used is a very important conversation that's happening now within the space of policy, right? Especially because new technologies, big tech companies are finding loopholes around data acquisition. Now, at the end of the day, AI and machine learning is a tool. It depends on how we use it and what we use it for. And there really is the need for an oversight and review from humans as the end process, right? So at the end of the day, like I said earlier, you get all that data, you automate all the processes, but at the end of the day, the human element is there as a check and balance. But I must also add this as another paradigm or another perspective to see when it comes to producing, when it comes to journalism and how it ties into data, right? Quality is also at stake. I think there is a tendency, or there is the temptation, I think, to follow the data too closely or too religiously, like in the sense where maybe the data says that you should do this in order to get more readership. The data tells you to do this in order to get more attention on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, whatever, right? And we have algorithms, right? Certain newsrooms, I'm sure, out there use algorithms to scrape and surface the best performing SEOs, which is search engine optimizations, right? What you click, what you type on Google comes out on top, and apply it to, say, headline writing, or use that sort of data and information, that analysis, to direct what sort of stories you write and produce, right? Content, for example. Now, the problem with that, right? The problem with developing content just to chase views and consequently advertising revenue, because unfortunately, that's how advertising works, right? Advertisers only give money if they know that, say, a media company has the most eyeballs, the most readership that they can sell products to. Now, this is where I would say, just because it's popular, just because the data says it's popular, or the data says that's where the most views are, it doesn't mean that it is good. It doesn't mean that it is in the best interest of society at large, right? Because journalism as a practice, at the end of the day, and I think we've emphasized this many times, even in the previous round, it's about the storytelling of the human condition, right? Whether it's about politics, whether it's about the impact of the economy on everyday lives, or even social issues, right? How we navigate social issues, how we interact with another, how we understand each other through journalism, right? And this means stepping back and reflecting on what are the most important stories to tell and why should we be dictated by data. And sometimes the data can be wrong, right? Popular decisions are sometimes not popular decisions. Populist sentiments, in fact, is maybe not the best. And this is where we need an ethical framework, right? To think a sort of like a check and balance, a sort of like a space to reflect. And are we doing the right thing? Are we doing right by society, by the population, when we use data to drive our decision making?
Tengku, before I proceed with your question, would you like to add on to what Aziff just said?
Well, Aziff, you mentioned about ethics being the heart of journalism. I just want to bring attention to everyone here to this book that is authored by Magnum photographer Jonas Bendixen. For those who are uninitiated, Magnum is probably one of the world's most foremost photo collective, and it was formed by David Seymour, Robert Capa, and Henri Cartier-Bresson. So this photographer, Jonas Bendixen, I believe it was last year, he published this book called Book of Veles. The story was, okay, the explanation is going to be a bit tricky. I'll try to be very brief. So the book was essentially about this town in northern Macedonia that was known through the Trump campaign to create a lot of fake news. So Jonas Bendixen, knowing that and having interest in this town called Veles, he did research into it, and he found that there is this pseudo-religious text, a Slavic text, that was known as the Book of Veles. And in some nationalist circles, it was considered a religious text. And there were academic studies done on this supposed book in the 1970s, only to find out that it was actually fake. It was this fabricated book in the early 20th century. So he had this idea. He's going to this town in Veles in northern Macedonia, working on, which is producing fake news for social media consumption. Plus, with this book, this so-called historical book, he produced this book of his purported documentary photography of this town, also named Book of Veles. Here's the kicker. For 6 months, I think it was about 6 months, he kept the whole photojournalism industry, the whole elite photojournalism industry, it was a complete lie. His pictures were a fabrication of AI. All the people that were shown in this book don't exist. But all the other Magnum photographers that he showed this book to, none of them caught on. It was also shown in Perpignan, in the Visa pour la Image photo industry. It's an annual photo exhibition. And it, no one caught on to it. So anyways, Aziff, you have a question, sorry.
No, that's very interesting. It's a meta commentary, isn't it? Just like an art performance, right? You create an art performance which is so countercultural to the established norm that people suddenly, hey, this is great, this is like amazing, but actually they don't realize they're part of the entire performance, right? By reacting as such. It's a critique on the elite. Yeah.
Exactly.
No, that's great. Actually, I did not know, but I have to read up about it after this.
I just posted a link in the chat. This will bring you to the Magnum Photos website, and it's an interview with Bendixen. It's quite a long read, so I would suggest you go through when you have the time. It's scary stuff to know that, one of the A-list photographers of our generation could successfully pull this off. He did it as a test for our industry. How do we take to it? What kind of consequences would he face? On a personal note, our industry will go on as normal. The much bigger ramification of this is we might not do what he blatantly did as journalists, but what about our sources? You know, we get press releases from organizations, governments. What makes us think that those organizations can't do the same thing to us and we are just perpetuating a lie? Up till now, it's mainly been through text, some deep fake videos. Pictures, for the most part, has been limited to rudimentary Photoshop work, but it's usually out of context. But what Ben Dixon did was right from the beginning, like, his research, his pictures, the text that appears in the book were all fed information, and the AI spit out this book. What kind of implications does that mean to us? Did he do a good thing? Did he? I personally, I think that at considerable cost to his reputation, he actually brought forth the real and clear present dangers of implementing AI within journalism, and also how we trust information given to us in this, I don't know, this post-truth world, I guess.
Right. Thank you, Tengku, and also Aziff for adding on to the discussion. Tengku, I know you may have mentioned this, but I'd just like to ask you, in your opinion, as someone who is accustomed to the newsroom, the culture of the newsroom and whatnot, can the practice and implementation of AI and also robotic journalism in the newsroom greatly aid in reporting news events, especially major news events? Tengku.
Yes, I think it does. It can very much. Just like Aziff said just now, machine learning is very much dependent on how we gather that information and how we present that information. The issue to me isn't so much the implementation of AI within journalism. It's our credibility it's the public perception, our credibility as journalists. How will the public at large view us? The issue is not our process, the issue is of a perception. If we trust AI beyond a certain ethical point, will the public at large trust news organizations? That's why we need human oversight, we need accountability. And are we at a point right now where we are already losing that trust?
Aziff, would you like to add anything?
No, I think not exactly no, but as in have nothing to add. But I think Tengku summarized it quite nicely that it is about trust, right? And I think now we are facing this sort of culture where we want to quantify or datafy every aspect of our lives, right? I mean, think of people who use Fitbits. I'm not against it, by the way. It's a great tool to kind of like measure and keep track of your health. But think about the Fitbit, right, and how that feeds information of your heartbeat, of your state or physical being into an app, right, and then processes you and graphs out how your health looks like. And that's great, but at the same time, it's interesting to me as a data analyst, right? How obsessed I think our society has become of data, and we see data as a truth, which in an ideal way, in a very scientific, positivist perspective, yes, data is the truth. But as in journalism, right? How do we how do we understand the data within the context that we have it, right? So for me, as an example, right, when I was a policy researcher, I processed a lot of government data, economic data, economic indicators, social indicators. But I have to be very mindful with how I process the data, right? Because I have to constantly remind myself that the sort of data and how the government presents it in their report is in a way that is beneficial to them. So when say the Ministry of Finance says that this year our economy is great, we're doing great statistically, right, GDP wise and all that, and I have to ask myself, like, is that really true? And that's the job of a journalist, right? That's the job of anybody who reads the data, is that you have to take a step back and ask yourself, is this true? I have to verify the data. So then you look at secondary sources, you compare that statistic, that statement by the Ministry of Finance, for example, against other social indicators. What are the other academics saying about it? What are on the ground stories of how people feel the economy or live the economy, right? What are other statistics or measurement tools saying about our economy? So sometimes even in the economy, it's all about measuring how we measure things, right? How we process things. And governments around the world use different ways to measure the economy, their data. And certain ways of measurement might be more beneficial to certain groups to present it in a good way. I think China is not opaque with how they measure the economy, right? Compared to, say, differently in other countries like the US, for example. And that's a source of concern, because now, and that's the point in which journalists need to be very aware, right? If I get this data, is this data accurate? And even if it's accurate, is the way it's presented to me reflective of reality? Is it really true that the economy is the state that it is, as the government says it is? And that's where the human element comes in, right? That's where the human oversight comes in. We need that sort of check and balance. We need that reflective process to stop, take back a step, and just like assess it properly and critically, most importantly.
Thank you, Aziff. I guess what we can say is that even though the integration of AI is becoming inevitable, but at the end of the day, at the receiving end, we humans are still the important, or what I say, the most important element. So it's still one for AI and one for humans, I guess. So Jeff Bezos, Elon, hold on for a second there, I guess. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, before we open the floor for the Q&A session, I'd like to ask one final question for both Aziff and also Tengku. Aziff, Tengku, as the integration of AI in the field of journalism, as I mentioned, is inevitable, may I know what are your hopes towards AI, the integration of AI in the field of journalism? Do you have any sort of resentment or maybe fear towards the addition of this technology? We can begin with Aziff.
Right. Fear, resentment. No, I love new technology. I think anyone who knows me knows that I am one of the first people, I guess, in my social group, that when a new technology comes, I like to explore it. I like to see how it implements, and more importantly, how it changes human behavior and cultural behavior. Right? That's the sociologist in me, I guess, the sociologist training in me. And for me, at the end of the day, AI, machine learning, its implementation is a tool. It is how we use that tool and the sort of processes we put in place, which is the most important aspect of journalism. And for me, this is a far shot. And I think a lot of different academics, especially those in ethical philosophies, right, are discussing it, is this idea of implementing ethical frameworks into how we do things. And in journalism, even though every journalist has been trained in some way, I guess, minor or otherwise, that there is an ethical process to sourcing, there's an ethical process to how we write stories or present it, and everything. The ideal, I guess, is that every newsroom actually has a person appointed specifically to question the ethical decision making, editorial decision making for the entire organization. And I know that's like an ideal world, right? It's never going to happen because implementing an ethical point in any process will always slow down the process, because then you have someone who's asking, are we supposed to do it that way? Are we supposed to do it that way? Even in the tech industry, there is discussions of implementing an ethical framework, but the tech industry doesn't like that, right? Because tech industry is all about moving fast, breaking things. Regulations be damned, right? Ethics be damned. But yeah, the ideal is an overarching ethical framework, that one point where everything stops and this person asks, should we be doing it that way? Is that the right way that we're doing things? That's, I guess, my philosophical hope for things.
Tengku, you have the floor.
I was just thinking, I think whoever put Aziff and I on this as panelists for this discussion did a really good job, because we agree on a lot of things, but at the same time, I think we have different opinions on how things should be implemented. This is where I veer off the other direction. I am open to to technology and AI within the tools of our trade. Like I have been witness to how photography equipment has changed, how we file and how we communicate in the newsroom has changed over the 25 years I've been in this profession. It's made our job easier in many respects, but so Aziff is dealing with a lot of data, and he's making sense of that data. For me, at one time as a photographer, now as a photo editor, I want to reach out and connect to humans. And photographs are the way to do that. And I don't think there is, I don't think we can go out on, say, Google Street View and start taking frame grabs and call that journalism with impact. That will never happen. And, if you're talking about, an actual physical robot to go out and take pictures, I don't think that will happen in our lifetimes. So where are we? What are we left with? We are left with cameras that can do the job with smartphones, previously laptops, that can help the journalists get the job done. And ultimately, at the end of the day, it is the photographer who goes out in the field, who puts him or herself in harm's way. And I have had colleagues who have lost their lives doing this job. That's the ultimate sacrifice. I don't think a machine could ever do that. Another thing I want to add is that as humans, as kalau ikut bahasa Melayu kita lah, or Arabic, insan. When I prefer to use the word, instead of being humans, like we are insan. And as insan, we have amanah. And the closest English translation to the word amanah is responsibility. But if you really look deeper into the spiritual meaning of what amanah is, it encompasses the physical world and something beyond. And that's what makes us human. We can depend on AI, but we are giving up a lot about what makes us whole as insan.
Thank you, Tengku, and also Aziff. That summarizes both of our rounds of the discussion. Before we proceed to the Q&A session, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to remind the participants to please fill up the feedback form that has been provided to you in the chat box. Another warm reminder to fill up the feedback form that has been provided. It would be great for us to get feedback from you for the next colloquium. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears we are nearing the end of our session, but as I mentioned earlier, we are about to go to the Q&A session. The first question, this is for Tengku from Umu Mashita. This is a question from YouTube actually, as we are streaming this session on YouTube. Tengku, might be a bit out of context, but she would like to know what's your POV on the field of journalism nowadays. She believes that a few of the writings that she sees nowadays is going against many principles required in journalism, such as transparency. Tengku, you have the floor.
Oh, that's a very general question without much specifics. Um, look, at the end of the day, when we talk about journalism, there are different aspects of journalism. What are we providing for? What's our content? What's our target audience? You know, like entertainment journalism, which is a bit of an oxymoron if you ask me, is very different from investigative journalism. It's very different from covering conflict. So when you're talking about ethics, about how things are covered, what might not work for one might not work for the other. I don't have enough information to properly answer that question, to be honest. It's it can be interpreted in a very wide range, and I do not want to be misquoted on this.
Okay, thank you, Tengku. We are going to continue with the second question from YouTube. This is from Umi Najiha. Umi asks, I believe this is directed to both of you. Do the users of AI in journalism, I'm sorry, I have to reword that question. Will the usage of AI in journalism increase unemployment rates, especially in Malaysia? I believe we have addressed this a bit, but I'm just going to give it to both of you. Maybe you can begin with Aziff first. Aziff?
Yeah, I think in the history of industry, there's always this fear that the machines are going to take over our jobs, and I think that fear is really overblown, right? And it's this idea that like I said, machine learning automation will make obsolete the human parts of it that they used to do, right? And for me, I think it's kind of overblown. I don't particularly think it's true, especially in the field of journalism that is very human driven, right? Like we've been talking about this for the past half an hour. At the heart of journalism is about, and Tengku said it very eloquently, there's insan, right? There is the human element of journalism that cannot be replaced by a machine, no matter how efficient the machine is, right? Let's think of journalism as an evolving industry, right? So maybe previously we'll send journalists to go out to the field, photojournalists to go out to the field to get photographs, to get stories, put stories together, so on and so forth. Now, when you introduce AI, machine learning, automated processes into it, like I said earlier, it's just tools to make all that heavy lifting much easier. Now you free up resources for journalists or other staff to do other things. Now think of the journalism industry, right? It's now journalists also can be programmers. They also have to learn new code, new digital languages like Python, R, SQL, right, in order to process these languages. And what you're doing is that you are further evolving the journalism industry so you're not exactly making people unemployed per se. Machines are there to just help you with the tools. Now what you have for journalists is journalists who are much more adept, I think, at dealing and adapting to the new age, which is digital, very, very much digital, right? And I think that's a good thing. There's always a fear of new technology. And for me, it's not about being scared of new technology. It's about seeing the opportunities that come with new technology. But of course, with opportunities come the responsibility of how you embrace those opportunities and how you implement it into the newsroom framework, right? How you do things. But no, my simple answer is machines will not replace people. It will not make people unemployed. Unemployment will be driven a lot by how the industry reacts to changes.
Tengku, you'd like to add on?
Yeah, I'm going to pull in an analogy in aviation. I've had a personal interest in aircraft since I was very young. So the issue is whether AI will, create unemployment amongst journalists. The way I see it is very similar to Aziff's perspective, but you also have to look at it from a generational perspective. You know, as the industry changes, the old guard will eventually retire. You know, their set ways of doing things, their way of, you know, their SOPs, their version of ethics might be a certain perspective. But when the new generation comes in, it's different. So back to, say, aviation as a personal interest. When the first jetliners came out, you know, the 707s, early 737s, and the 747s, the cockpit was flown by 3 people. You had the pilot, the first officer, the co-pilot, and a flight engineer. So this third person, the flight engineer, his job is to make sure that, you know, the fuel rates are fine. He does all the math. He also makes sure the engines are working fine. You would be hard pressed to find any commercial aircraft now that requires 3 people in the cockpit. It's down to 2. But is the aviation industry now facing unemployment? You know, I mean, I'm not versed in the aviation industry, but the industry adapts, and just it's, you know, the humans involved in the profession adapt too. Likewise, you know, like now, for instance, I might be editing pictures in a certain way. I don't know what it's going to be in 30 years' time. Will my job still be relevant? I don't know. It doesn't mean that we would face unemployment then. It's just that things have changed.
Okay, thank you, Tengku and Aziff. Another question from one of our viewers on YouTube. I think I'm going to start this off with input from Tengku first. From Chrome Lotus, somewhere around the world, this individual says, info is being suppressed for the convenience of context to disallow panic among the masses. Where do you have insights in for such inclusive knowledge and statements? Should we host in others to bypass these censorships? Did I get that?
I think you were breaking up a bit. Could you repeat the question again?
Of course. A question from Chrome Lotus. The question is, somewhere around the world, info is being suppressed for the convenience of context to disallow panic among the masses. Where do you have insights for such inclusive knowledge and statement? Should we host in others to bypass these censorships? That's the question.
I have to think a bit. So is the person who asked this question, is he asking it because he doesn't trust news that is coming out from official sources? If that is so, where is he getting his alternative sources? Are they reliable? Or are they rumors? Yeah, information might be suppressed. But the question is, can you still get hold of alternative facts? And can you trust those, you know, can you trust that other source? It's like I said, it's a very general question. I cannot answer it with any specifics, but this is a classic case, this current time, where you're struggling in a post-factual world. And information is easy to come by. And you don't trust that information. Now, when I started my profession, I was always told that, look, when you read news, where you the newspaper or the news organization you're getting your information from, that's a product. And just like a product, you do your shopping. If all you hear is product A is good, it must be good. You're missing out on what product B or product C is offering you. Likewise, it's the same thing with your news. You know, let's take American politics, for instance. If you are getting all your sources of CNN, you're going to have a very liberal perspective. On the flip side, there's Fox News and others in between. You might not like or agree with various news outlets, but the idea as an informed individual is you need to see things from different perspectives. Now, the issue is, once again, what is your source? If you're reading, say, some news outlet that you don't agree with, you're looking for other facts, but it's not a media outlet. It's coming out from some guy who's tweeting stuff. Yeah. What's his source? Is it news or is it something else? It's that's it. I cannot answer the question properly, but this is an example of the post-truth world we live in, unfortunately.
Aziff, would you like to give your thoughts on the question?
Right. I think I will, as a journalist, as a former journalist myself, I will also actually agree with Tengku on this one, right? Where are you getting your stories? Where are you getting your sources from? And I think for journalists, sources are very, very important because your credibility actually rides a lot on your sources, right? Because you're trusting one person who's giving you information. And you have to also think about it in this sense, right? Does your source have their own personal interest? Why are they sharing you the story, right? And over the years, right, there are people who come up to me when I was a journalist, telling me certain information which to me is like, if I publish could this information make someone look bad? And in this case, what is the interest of this person telling me this certain thing, right? And that's the thing about sources, right? You have to be very careful with how you view them, with how you interpret them, how you also, I think, make that decision, the ethical decision, whether or not this is worthy to be published. Right? What are the implications of publishing such information from such sources, whether you can trust them or not? But this also, I think, because our subject today is about AI, machine learning, and for me, this also goes back to how you process large amounts of data, right? And this is where early on I mentioned, where are you getting your sources from, right? Are you getting them from government? Are you getting them from WikiLeaks, for example? Are you getting them from maybe some other sources? And there are in this entire history of recent history, at least, there are sources that come from questionable places, right? So, for example, I think a few weeks ago, there was a website that popped up suddenly, right? A website popped up, and then there were stories. There were pictures, photographs, information of Uyghur nationals in China being tortured, and their faces were shown, right? And for me, I was spending a lot of time kind of looking into the website and thinking, I wonder who's funding this, because the website looks well designed, one. But two, for some weird reason, suddenly every American website, every American news outlet is carrying this story. This doesn't mean that I'm discounting that there are a lot of human rights abuses happening in China, but it does make me wonder, if the source of truth for a lot of these newsrooms is to use this website, where they're getting sources from, what is the interest of this website? Who's funding this website, right? Where are they getting their sources from as well? And I think that multi-step process in thinking about where you get your information, how you process them, they may be true, but you always have to think of what is the interest behind this person giving me this piece of information, this data. And we need to remind ourselves, we need to remember that all the time, because your reputation is on the line, right? It's not that the person's reputation on the line. If you publish that information, the people are going to remember who was it who wrote that story, which news outlet was it that published that story. And if it's found to be fake, or if it's found that you are, like I said earlier, like Tengku mentioned earlier, right, about a photojournalist who did the Book of Veils, there's a question of credibility of not only the photographer, but the industry as a whole. Can we trust the industry if it's already shown that there are weaknesses in the process, right, where due diligence didn't exist? Yeah.
I see Tengku wave his hand. Tengku?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, when you're talking about the, that data dump of the Uyghurs who are imprisoned.
Yeah, well-designed
Yeah.
website, I will say.
The BBC also covered, did a good coverage on that. Just to put within context, it was actually timed with the visit of the UN Human Rights Commissioner to Xinjiang.
There you go.
There you go. So I'm not going to pick sides or give my opinions on this, but it begs the question: why was it released in that particular time? Someone might have an interest, or to control the narrative.
And I think that's as far as I think we can share on that subject, to be honest, without implicating ourselves. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're slowly revealing new things in the discussion. But anyway, thank you, Tengku and Aziff. I have one more question, one final question. And this one is directed to Aziff. The question is from Khairul Nisa on YouTube. Nisa asks, we know robot journalism is still flawed. Do you think we could be able to perfect it? Aziff.
Everything's a process. So I wouldn't say AI journalism is exactly new. Nothing is, right? When you introduce a new technology into how we do things, there will always be weaknesses. That's true of policymaking as well, right? When you introduce a new program, what is more important is that you have a process, you have something in part of the process that evaluates the efficacy, the impact of what you introduce into the element, right? Same thing for machine learning. So you write a piece of code that maybe scrapes thousands of data points from different ministries, and then you cross-reference them, right? The first piece of code that you write may not be perfect, but over time, because it's also machine learning, right? So it learns from experience, it learns from how you evolve. It evolves over how the sort of information that you feed in. So you, as a reviewer, you look back at the code and say, okay, times have changed. I see that the sort of information that we're getting also a bit different. Now let me tweak this little bit of code. Let me change the sort of dependencies it relies on to read the information differently, right? To make it more accurate, for example, or maybe to look for different things. Everything's part of a process. Everything's part in whatever industry you're in, and especially journalism, right? Ethical standards change. The tools that we use change. The way newsrooms are run change. How different then is it when it comes to introducing a new element like machine learning? That will change as well, but it changes over time, and it changes over time if we constantly review its applicability, whether it's applied, we review whether it works and its impact, positive or negative otherwise. So yeah, the one thing I always keep in mind that when it comes to thinking about human history, humanity in general, we are work in processes. 10 years ago, we wouldn't be talking about things like social justice, for example, but now it's a big thing. And that's because our ethical, social, and cultural standards have evolved over time, because as a collective, we discuss these things, right? We have new ways to think about existing frameworks. Yeah.
Thank you, Aziff, for the input. With that, that ends our Q&A session. Ladies and gentlemen, it appears that we have come to the end of our session. I would like to thank our distinguished members of the panel, or panelists, Aziff and also Tengku, for what I believe such a fruitful and also insightful session today. At one point, you were almost revealing other things as well. But I guess that's a topic for another day. Before that, I also like to thank all of our sponsors, Yusa Food Products, Senjai Berhad, Racepix Media Services, Alif Design, and also the Ministry of Tourism, Arts and Culture for their contributions in ensuring that this event goes smoothly as planned. But before we disperse, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to invite everyone here to please turn on your cameras for a good photo. So everyone, if you may, do turn on your cameras and smile. Okay, I'm seeing a few screens there. Aziff, Tengku, if you can see those with the E-Colloquium background, that's members of the floor, the committee members. I believe I see Madam Azina Nainon, our course coordinator, Madam Fazila, teaches us on media law and ethics. I also see Miss Iman and also Madam Zalifa. Miss Iman there, who teaches us data analytics. You can see there. And also Madam Zalifa. And also, okay, Catherine might need to change a bit on the background. All right. Okay, technical team, whenever you're ready. Ladies and gentlemen, smile in 3, 2, 1. And another one in 3, 2, 1. Got it? All right. Thank you, everyone. With the photo session done, we have officially arrived to the end of our discussion with our panelists for today. However, for the audience at home, or wherever you may be, do stay tuned for a while as I will announce the winners for the Baca Berita and Radio DJ Challenge. And also for the participants, I would like to remind again, please don't forget to fill up the feedback form and check out our social media at Colloquium45. I repeat again, Colloquium45. That's a KOLOKIUM 45. Right? Thank you and stay safe, everyone. And for Aziff and Tengku, would like to stay for a while to see those who have won for the Baca Berita Radio DJ Challenge that we made a few weeks ago. Would like to stay for a while and see?
Yeah, no worries. I have
Sure,
time.
why not? Yeah.
Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, a few weeks ago, Colloquium 45 had sent out 2 challenges for the public to participate in, which is the Baca Berita Challenge and the Radio DJ Challenge. The objective of these 2 challenges was simple. It was to test the news reading and also radio broadcasting skills of the participants, where they were given a set of scripts to read out aloud. After receiving more than a dozen submissions, if I may say, by the participants, and after much head-breaking deliberation by the judges, ladies and gentlemen, today we have the winners. Ladies and gentlemen, for the Baca Berita Challenge, the winner is Nurul Haifa at Far Halim on Instagram and also on TikTok. Far Halim Nurul Haifa, followed by Fatina Asmat at 2nd place at FTNA SMT. Yeah, Fatiana, okay. And at 3rd place, Raja Nakiuddin. Congratulations to the 3 of you. Ladies and gentlemen, before I reveal to you the winners of the Radio DJ Challenge, let's make way for the sponsors of the 45th Journalism E-Colloquium. the committee had came up with those two challenges, and we had participants coming from Instagram and also on TikTok. Well, I guess because it is a School of Journalism, Faculty of Communication and Media Studies, Department of Journalism, so we just can't run away from the newscasting skills and also the radio DJ broadcasting skills. I mean, by the end of the day, we might go to those two channels. So yes, was also to see the hidden talents out there, you know, aside from the at the faculty, might others have the relevant skills to do so. And I think we have seen many great participants with amazing skills and also their fluency in becoming newscasters and also radio DJs. Okay, now, ladies and gentlemen, up next are the winners for the Radio DJ Challenge. At first place goes to, drumroll, Muhammad Hakimin. Muhammad Hakimin at Kim Victory. TikTok Kim Victory 888. Muhammad Hakimin received great comments from the judges. Suitable to be a radio DJ actually. Okay, up next, followed by second place, goes to Kawima Umaira. At second place, Kawima Umaira. And at third place goes to Nurul Hawa Farahim. Nurul Hawa Farahim. Congratulations to the winners. However, as the nature of all challenges and competitions, only few can attain the title of winner. And for those who didn't make the cut this time, don't fret, not to worry. We're looking forward to see you participate in the next set of challenges in the next colloquium, I'm afraid. With that, I believe we have come to the end of our discussion today. Before we disperse, I would just like to say on behalf of the committee, the organizers, the faculty as well, just like to say thank you very much to Aziff and also Tengku for such an amazing session, if I may say. What we discussed today, your insight surpassed what we expected from today's discussion. It was just amazing. Great to have the two of you here. And I believe all of us, I share the same sentiment as well. We do hope to see you again in the near future, maybe in the news. This time, maybe Aziff will come up at the byline or somewhere, and also Tengku's work as well. But yeah, again, I would just like to say thank you very much from the both of you. Aziff, Tengku, any more closing remarks?
No, thank you very much for having us. It's been a great hour actually discussing all these subjects.
Thank you very much. Really enjoyed being part of this. And once again, wanted to commend all you guys who put this together. And I think, like I said, whoever teamed me with Aziff, I think did a very good job.
I agree. I really enjoyed this session with you talking about you. Not even today, but yesterday's discussion was great as well.
I think it's good that we agree on many things, but there are things that we agree to disagree.
Yeah.
I guess I'll just stay with what Tengku said as agree to disagree. Power duo from the both of you. And I think there's a few words that my course coordinator, Madam Mazlina, would like to say. Madam, what? I saw you raising your hand. Or was it away?
Okay, thank you, Fahmi. Okay, thank you to the panelists, Tengku Bahar and also Aziff. It's honor to have you as our panelists today, and a very insightful sharing session. And I hope we continue in maybe other platform. Hopefully, I know Tengku Bahar quite active in the clubhouse.
Used to be.
Used
I think people have been a bit dormant lately.
Okay, but I hope to see you in the other time. Okay.
that's all from Madam. Just like to say again, thank you very much, Aziff, and also Tengku. See you in the closest future, I guess. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Assalamualaikum.
Assalamualaikum.
Waalaikumsalam.
Waalaikumsalam.